Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 37 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by Eugenie Kruger, a homeopath and host of the Homeopathy Hangout Podcast from Perth, Australia. In this inspiring episode, Eugenie and I dive into the fascinating world of homeopathy, a medical modality I am extremely passionate about that has supported both me and my horses for over a decade. It has been in existence for over 200 years and is currently utilised by over 500 million people worldwide and is a truly valuable ally in these modern times. Whilst a few common homeopathic remedies, like arnica, have recently received more acceptance in public perception, in the past homeopathy has often been attacked, dismissed and mocked by Big Pharma and the mainstream media, which sadly means many people only find their way to homeopathy as a last resort. In this fun and informative chat, Eugenie shares how homeopathy helps us approach health and well-being in a different, more empowering way, getting curious about symptoms and what they can teach us rather than simply suppressing them. We explore some of the newer science that is helping explain the power of homeopathy, including how through amazing people like Vada Austin, we are starting to understand the secret intelligence of water and the impact this has on how science understands the potency of homeopathic remedies. Homeopathy powerfully can offer support to the entire family, including pregnant mothers, newborn babies, animals and even plants. It can help in first aid situations and for chronic long-term conditions, whilst also being affordable enough that it can even be utilised to assist the poorest people. If you've previously dismissed homeopathy, I'd urge you to listen to this conversation with an open mind and delve into some of the incredible resources Eugenie has put together in the links below to allow you to draw your own conclusions and hopefully consider utilising the power of homeopathy to support your family going forwards. Well, welcome Eugenie, and thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I'm really looking forward to speaking to you today and learning more from you about homeopathy, because I think it's just such an amazing field, and it's just something that I hope more people become aware of because it's just so powerful. But just to get us started, I like to just ask my guests if they'd share a little bit about their nature story. So it can just be really what nature means to you or has meant to you through your life, or any fond memories. Or so if there's anything you'd like to share to get us started, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Hi, Fiona. It's so lovely to be on the show. So we actually live on 16 acres here in Perth,
Oh,
Western
wow.
Australia. So we are outside all the time. We have 2 donkeys and 2 cats and 2 dogs and 6 chickens. And I've got a 9-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, and they are outside all the time. They
Amazing.
also go to a Steiner school that's on 25 acres. So we really want to make sure that they have, reduce the technology and that they're outside in nature,
Yeah.
because it's so good for your gut microbiome. Like, the kids are constantly in the dirt. So my kitties are so healthy, and there's so many more studies coming out these days showing that a lot of the allergies and things that kids have is because they're simply not playing in the dirt enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all my holidays were spent growing up in South Africa in the Cedarburg Mountains, climbing the mountains, being chased by baboons and snakes, and swimming in watering holes. And I love that you were in the Kruger National Park for 5 years.
Yeah,
South
no,
Africa
I
is
know
absolutely
it's just a
beautiful.
beautiful country, and I
Yeah.
just that a real wilderness experience. Mind you, in Australia, you've got that as well for your own children there, haven't you? And it is just it's just so special to develop that connection in childhood, isn't it? I think it's I mean, you can develop it later in life, but it's something magical and special about being a child with your imagination and out in the nature and the animals and the plants, and just having that freedom.
Absolutely. We have a little outcropping of granite rocks here on the property, and the kids call it Rock Village. And we will just lose them for days. Like, they'll just be out there, they'll take like a little backpack and they just like spend the day there. So it makes me really happy to see them in nature. And we used to do a lot of camping, these days not so much. And I've always been into gardening. I've always had a veggie garden. And so yeah, nature is very special to me.
Yeah, interwoven in your life, which is amazing and fantastic to hear, and great your children are been growing up with that experience as well. Whether they move away from it and come back to it, or ebbs and flows in their life, it's always just nice to have had that experience growing up that they can come back to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you got into homeopathy, I guess it was about 15 years or so ago, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, 2010.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, you said that you actually, when we connected at first and you even knew what homeopathy was, I was blown away because so many people these days don't. But in saying that, in the UK, I mean, they had homeopathic hospitals there and it was
Yeah,
part of the
yeah, we do
NHS
have, I think,
and Prince Charles.
five homeopathic hospitals in the UK, so we're quite lucky
Yeah.
in that respect. But there is still a lot of resistance to it, even with that sort of infrastructure in place.
And the royal family have used homeopathy for about 200 years. It was introduced by Queen Victoria in 1845 in the royal family, and they've used it ever since. And Prince Charles only uses homeopathics. The Queen used to travel with loads of remedies. She had a homeopathic physician called Dr. Peter Fisher, who sadly passed away on Ride Your Bike to Work Day, which apparently you guys have over there. And he rode his bicycle to work and he got run over by a bus
Oh
after
no.
17 years of being the Queen's homeopathic physician.
Oh.
Apparently, the royal family does have a new homeopathic physician now, but I don't know if it's good enough for the royal family. It's good enough for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I think there is sadly in sort of mainstream, I'll say media, there's sort of a little bit of a hatred for it, and they often try and sort of undermine it and dismiss it, but it's it stood the test of time. That's what I come back to. It's been around for a long time, and there's actually a lot of people worldwide that do use it. I think you had an amazing figure on your website as sort of 500 million people
Half a
worldwide.
billion people
Yeah,
worldwide use homeopathy, and in many countries like India and South America, it's one of their main forms of medicine. India actually has a minister of Ayush, which is Ayurveda, um, yoga, and something else, and then homeopathy is in there
yeah,
as well as part of the acronym. And yeah, they've got hundreds of homeopathic hospitals in India, and I mean it's used all over Europe. It's used all over the world. Just some places it's a little bit better known than others. And I'm
yeah,
glad you've said it stood the test of time because, yeah, it's been around for 250 years and the principles of homeopathy has remained unchanged. The
yeah.
remedies, we've never in 250 years ever withdrawn a homeopathic medicine from the shelves. And if you
Wow.
look at pharma and how drugs are pulled off the shelf on a
Yeah,
daily basis, nobody has ever died from homeopathic medicine, whereas pharma drugs are one of the leading causes of death in the world.
I know it's a
Homeopathy
shocking statistic that, isn't
it's
it? That
shocking
most people,
statistic.
I mean, I think well, my experience with homeopathy really came to the fore through my horses, and unfortunately, I had I had two horses that had very complex health issues, which conventional mainstream medicine actually just ran out of options for them. It was literally like we have nothing more to offer. And I'm not someone to sit on my laurels. And I was like, well, I'm not going to sit here with, my beautiful horses and do nothing. I'm like, what can I do? And it was at that point that I found an amazing homeopathic vet in the UK who very sadly has now passed away. He was well into his 70s or 80s, I think, when he passed away. Had this huge wealth of lifetime experience in veterinary medicine and then had developed an interest in homeopathy because he'd seen, the times when there wasn't something that he could do and he'd wanted to find something that he could do. And then he just obviously experimented with it and then saw that it worked again and again and again. And I think that's the power of it, isn't it? Is a lot of times some people do come to these sort of healing modalities because mainstream medicine fails them or doesn't have any options for them. And then when they've experienced it, they're like, actually, why did I wait as this is the last resort? This is actually should be on the the front line of my choice and what to do.
We have an acronym in homeopathy, TEETH. Tried everything else, try homeopathy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm so glad you mentioned about the animals, Fiona, because homeopathy is safe for not only pregnant women and babies from the second they're born to adults, to anybody on medication. It's got zero contraindications. It's also safe for animals of all sorts, furry or feathery or hairless, whatever they are. And also plants. Homeopathy is amazing for plants. So you can use remedies like aconite for transplant shock, or arnica if a branch, you mentioned before you use arnica a lot. Arnica if a branch's limb is broken off. You can use silica if the plant is wilting and you want to just make it nice and strong again. You can use it for various pests that the plants might be exposed to. There's an example is aphids, and we often use the remedy coccinella, which is actually made from the ladybug.
So which would be their natural predator, which is that's quite interesting.
So lots, you can use homeopathic remedy to rebalance your soil. So if there has been a loss of the topsoil, or there's been lots of pesticides and herbicides that's been used on the land, you can use homeopathic remedies to help rebalance the soil. And they actually do this in Africa quite a lot. There's an organization called Homeopathy for Health in Africa, and they actually supply these homeopathic remedies to these farmers to help them to get rid of pests and to rebalance the soil. But it's not getting rid of the pests as much as you are strengthening the plant so that they are more resistant to pests, which is what we do with the humans as well. We strengthen your vital force with the homeopathic remedies so that you're not as susceptible to illness. And that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day, is susceptibility.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I was actually talking to my partner about this morning in a different context to homeopathy, but we were saying it is this difference between focusing on like symptoms and seeing them as like the problem. And with homeopathy, I mean, that was one of my first experience with the homeopathic vet. Was I think he was with me for about 2 or 3 hours with my horse, whereas normally a sort of conventional veterinary appointment is probably, running to sort of 15 minutes, half an hour. And which, is their approach, and it's the same with doctors, isn't it? But you're looking at the whole person. In this, we'll talk about people predominantly, but obviously it does relate to animals and plants. But you're looking at the whole, aren't you? Everything about them, all of their traits, and that's really important for homeopathy, isn't it? Is to understand. And I think that's why it's important to go to someone like yourself and a homeopath, because you have this experience. And if you're sort of new to homeopathy, you might experiment with arnica if you've got a bruise, but sometimes there are better remedies for things that you're dealing with, that a homeopath can help you find and deal with.
That's absolutely right. And we'll ask you a gazillion questions when you come in. But one of the biggest things that, regardless of the complaint, is one of the first questions a homeopath will ask you: when did the symptoms start? So we'll always be interested, when did things change for you? When did your symptoms start? What happened around that time? Was there a fright? Was there a shock? Was there a grief? Was there perhaps an unknown poison? So maybe you moved into a new house and you didn't realize that there was black mold, and so you've actually been poisoned by that. Was there maybe a smart meter that was installed next to your bedroom, and then that's why you're not sleeping at the moment? Did you maybe grow up in an area like where we live at the moment called the wheat belt, where they spray a lot of glyphosate, so were you maybe accidentally poisoned? Did you maybe have some medical intervention that caused something like theirs? What we call it etiology. So what is the thing that caused the symptom that, to start, and kind of what happened around that time? And very often people won't be able to tell you, because especially not if it was a long time ago, if it's a very chronic illness and they can't remember 20 years ago what happened when it started. And so we'll start asking some questions about their life, and often we'll help them piece it together. And then, we might say, oh, where were you living at the time? Or what did you do at the time? And then they might go, oh, actually, now that you mention it.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is for most people, like, we're not taught, are we? We're not taught to have this kind of inquiring, curious, inquisitive mind about our lives and our experience. I mean, one of my horses who unfortunately had toxic liver poisoning, like, I used to basically, I mean, he was very, very ill for 6 months, and then it got progressively better. But I used to keep a diary, literally, like, every day. I'd note everything, environmental factors, how he was feeling, and And I'm quite glad in a way that I had that experience. Not that he suffered, but it's meant that I do have that approach to my own life. But for most people, it's completely foreign. It's like you don't think about, how you're going through life until something sort of stops you in your tracks, and then you pop off to the doctor and you say, "Oh, I've got these symptoms," and then they say, "Okay, well, have this pharmaceutical drug." And I think that for me is a huge thing about homeopathy is just changing like your relationship with yourself, really, isn't it? And your relationship with life and your awareness of how you're living and everything that's possibly impacting you.
It's actually, I was just thinking, it's so nice to be on a podcast where somebody actually knows what homeopathy is and you get the bigger picture. Because I'm used to being on podcasts and people have no idea what it is and they think it's herbs and they don't understand. But it's
Yeah,
really lovely that you actually understand that the bigger picture with homeopathy. And I think if you get raised with Western medicine, which is what I was
yeah,
raised with, we get taught that if there's a pain somewhere, you have to go and suppress it immediately.
yeah,
If you've got a cough, you have to suppress it immediately with anti tussivs. So, which actually in the Merck manual, it does say not to suppress it with conventional cough medication, which is interesting. I've actually got the Merck manual sitting right there. It's like this thick. It's the 25th year anniversary edition, but it actually says there in the mainstream, like medical manual, not to use
yeah,
antitussives because your body is trying to get that mucus up, which has got the bacteria and the viruses and things, and it's trying to get it out. Or if we've got a headache, we suppress it immediately instead of thinking, why did that headache start in the first
yeah.
place? Or one of the classics is young girls who have problems with their periods when it starts and they get put on hormonal
Oh, I
contraceptives
know.
straight away. And that's something that just terrifies me so much because not a lot of people, women, know that the only time in your life when you produce progesterone is when you ovulate. And when you're on the pill, you don't ovulate, it's suppressing your ovulation. And so, progesterone, which is one of the most incredible hormones to protect us against cancer, and it's a feel-good hormone, it's good for our bones, it's got so many health benefits. If you're on the contraceptive pill and you're not ovulating, you're not producing progesterone, and so you don't have any of these incredible health benefits that this amazing hormone has. But if you have got a grief, you are told to go on antidepressants. If you
Yeah,
feel anxious, you go on anti-anxiety meds. If you have ADHD, then they say go on Ritalin instead of finding, well, why do you have ADHD? Is it a trauma response?
yeah.
What is your diet like? Are there lots of stimulants in your diet? Lots of additives? Are you getting enough sleep? What's your environment like? Have you got lots of screen time? Like, go find out
Yeah.
why those symptoms are
Get
there and try
curious.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
love
Your
it.
symptoms, it's your
Yeah.
body's way of talking to you.
That's exactly it. I had a lovely conversation actually with a herbalist, which is different to homeopathy, a few episodes ago, called Megan, and she said like symptoms are your body's messages to you. They're like, they're writing these little notes to you to say, hang on a minute, like this is something we need to draw your attention to. It's just this completely different approach, which is what I mean I love, and I've seen the benefits myself. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, have we talked enough about what homeopathy is? Do you want to just maybe sort of like circle back to anyone who might be like, oh, I've never come across homeopathy before, like these guys are really clearly quite excited about it. But I actually have no idea what they're talking about, so maybe we should just cycle back a little bit and just bring in like talk a little bit about where homeopathy originated from and how it's made and things like that.
Mhm. I just have to say, I actually love that you did that because, as for the listeners, that I'm a podcast host as well of the Homeopathy Hangout podcast. And so the way that you were doing that, I was thinking, oh, that's actually very clever that she's doing that because we're like getting people reeled in with these stories and then we tell them what it is. Because often if you start off telling people what homeopathy is, they just like, what on earth is this? So I'll give you a simple explanation. Homeopathy is a natural medicine where the medicines are derived from plant, mineral, or animals. But we only need a teeny tiny amount to because the remedies are diluted in sucrase, and then we use the energetic frequency of that. Now, that all sounds a little bit woo-woo. It's really not. There is this incredible lady called Vada Austin, which I think most people on the planet have heard of these days, and she talks about how water has a memory.
Yeah.
And there's Dr. Masaru Emoto, and I think there's just more and more information coming out. Dr. Luc Montagnier has done some work on this as well. He was a Nobel Prize laureate. Um, so there's more and more of this type of information coming out about the memory of water. But the principle of homeopathy is actually really simple, and I really like to give this example so that people can kind of get it. When you go to I mean, we have lots of snakes here in Australia. So when you go to the hospital with a snake bite, what's the first thing that they're going to give you?
Would you have an anti-venom perhaps?
Yeah, exactly, which is made from snake venom,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And if you've ever heard of allergy immunotherapy, so if somebody is allergic to grass or bees or things like that, they
Yeah.
actually take the physical grass, they grind it up, and they inject it into you over a course of weeks, and sometimes months and sometimes years. And I've had clients who have done that, and after years of treatment, it hasn't worked. Then we give them the homeopathic remedy made from that bee or that grass, and the energetic resonance of that has cured their allergies. Um, but homeopathy is basically based on the principle of like cures like, which means that something that can cause a symptom in a healthy person can cure that same symptom in a sick person, like I just mentioned with the
Yeah.
snake and the grass. But also, if you think of onions, if you chop an onion, your eyes are going to start watering, right?
You're tearing up.
And then, yeah, but then one of our best remedies for like colds or hay fever, where one of the main symptoms is the streaming of the eyes, is the remedy allium cepa, which is made from the onion.
Yeah.
And another example that I'm sure everyone, although maybe in the UK not so much because you are tea drinkers, but over here we're mostly coffee drinkers. If you've had too much coffee, you can feel quite jittery and
That
anxious
wired
and
kind of,
yeah, that's wired feeling and insomnia, I can't get to sleep. But the homeopathic remedy made from coffee is incredible to calm the nervous system and to help you with sleep.
Yeah.
So I hope that kind of gives your listeners a bit of an
Yeah, I
explanation.
think and something that I love about it as well is the person who developed it. He actually was very scientific in his approach. He basically took these small amounts of whichever substance that he was interested in, and he gave them to healthy people to see what symptoms they developed. And then he was very careful observing it all. I mean, very scientific, really. It was this huge scientific experiment that he undertook. And then when he sort of got this picture of the symptoms that each remedy, because we call them remedies, don't we? That it's a homeopathic remedy, each one. And then he would go to someone who had those symptoms because they were ill, and he would then test the remedy to see if it helped them recover. And I mean, I think that's the thing that is kind of missed by some of the people who dismiss it, is like, actually you had this amazing scientist, he had been a doctor, and well, I'm sorry, I'm taking over here.
No, keep
But
going. I'm just sitting here
he
like
was also
amazed that you know
a
this. I'm so happy.
translator, wasn't he, as well?
He was.
And so he gave up. He was quite disheartened by the medicine of the time. And he basically went into translation, and it was through that he came across a text that kind of sparked his interest, but he still had that kind of scientific medical mind, and he went in and did all of these experiments and kind of devoted his life to it, really, didn't he? And it's amazing. Like, I mean, that there are thousands and thousands of different remedies, aren't there, made of all sorts of things, like you said, from plants, minerals, animals, and just, yeah, this huge. I mean, that's why I recommend people do seek out the support of a trained homeopath, because the amount of remedies out there are just phenomenal. And it is a real skill to match someone's symptoms with what might be appropriate. And whilst some homeopathic medicines have kind of filtered into the mainstream, and most people probably be quite aware of them, like we've mentioned arnica, like, actually, you might try it and it might not give you the results that you want, because you need that subtlety of understanding that only a homeopath can bring.
Yeah, but then in the same breath, it is really easy for home users to use. So for the basics, like the remedy cantharis, which is made from the Spanish blister beetle, and that one's really good for urinary tract infections and burns. And I sometimes just wish that everybody had this remedy in their household, because I've had it so many times where I've burned my hand on the stove, and I take a dose of cantharis and it takes the pain away instantly,
Yeah.
and there's no blistering the next day, or belladonna for fevers, or aconite for frights and shocks. And
I think
and you can easily
yeah.
prescribe that yourself. You don't need to be a homeopath for that, but for certainly for chronic diseases. So acute disease, I'll just differentiate that because some people don't know, but acute disease is something that's self-limiting. If you have a cold, it'll just go away by itself after a while if you do nothing with it. But a chronic disease will not go away by itself, like something like arthritis or Crohn's disease or any sort of autoimmune disease, really. Or if you've had eczema that's been going on for a few months, or if you've had a cough even that's been going on for a few months, then it becomes chronic. Anything that's longer than sort of like a week or two that is not going away by itself, that's when a homeopath really is worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, I think and something else that really appeals to me about it is they're actually they're really cheap.
Yes.
And
But
like
isn't that the
yeah,
way medicine should be? Like, if
yeah,
you
and it
think
makes
about
it
it.
accessible, doesn't it, to people? And like you say, you can, they are safe. You can have this little bit of degree of experimentation at home, have your little kits that, helps, particularly in first aid situations, like you were just saying, like you've burnt yourself, or arnica is obviously particularly good for bruising and shock and things like that. And, it's just, I mean, I have it for my horses. I have like several pots of of things that I have for them, and it's just amazing it's empowering, isn't it? I think for me that's what I feel. It's this sense of empowering, like, you're bringing awareness to your own body, your family, your health, what's going on, but then you feel you can do something as well in that moment, in that immediate moment, rather than being like, oh, I've got to, am I sick enough to go to the doctor? Do I need like the emergency medical, or yeah, so that's for me is the empowering side of it as well.
Yeah, and if you weren't sick before you went to the doctor, you'll certainly be sick after you've been there because there's all the germs in the reception area and all the trauma. And I don't know what your medical system's like over there, but it's pretty shocking over here.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great as well. Don't get me wrong. We have emergency medicine is really great. I'm very grateful to the medical profession. So I don't mean that. I just mean that sometimes it can be really hard to get the right diagnosis, or you can feel really rushed just in and out of the doctor's office, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
yeah,
It can be really hard. And I always say, I feel sorry for the medical profession because they have a hard gig. I mean, I could
yeah,
not help anybody if I only had a 5 or 10 minute consultation with a person. I couldn't do anything. So I feel really sorry for them. I think they could fix the medical system if they just made consultations like half an hour instead of 5 minutes. I think you
yeah,
could help people more. I mean, preferably an hour, but half an hour is certainly going to be a good start. But they're
yeah.
so under so much pressure.
I
But you
think
were right, the
yeah,
empowerment is a big one, and everybody should have a little homeopathic first aid kit with them, especially if you have little ones. But everyone should. I always have my. I was getting off my handbag. I always have my little homeopathic kit is attached to my handbag. This is
yeah,
my own brand. But I never go anywhere without, my 10 little remedies that's clipped onto my handbag. And we've used this so many times when we've gone to parks and kids have had bee stings or fallen over or all sorts. So it's great.
yeah. I think that's the thing, is that they're wonderful. Like, obviously, if people are listening to it and they couldn't see you, you just had this lovely little pouch. It's probably about the size of a mobile phone, I guess, a little bit, but thicker, and it had just these 10 little bottles in it. Because homeopathic pills, if you've not had them before, the remedies, well, there's various different ways that you can have them, but in your pouch just there, you had the little pills, and so you can have this little emergency thing, and it's really small and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I can't recall if you say that you do video at all or no video.
Yeah, no, I've got video if people want to watch it.
Okay.
It's on YouTube, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So we can see the tiny little pill in there and you just go like
Yeah, on your tongue, and then
this.
I mean, something that I will point out to, and you can dive in here, is there are just certain things that it's a good idea to, if you're taking them, not take them with other strong smells. So, things like you just brush your teeth or something, or avoid having a coffee immediately afterwards, isn't it? Things like that help make it effective as well.
Absolutely. But, at the same time, I have to say, we get taught that you have to take the remedies away from food. So if you've just eaten something, have some water to clean your palate.
Yeah.
Then take your remedies, then you can wait like sort of 5 or 10 minutes and then you can eat again. But when I've had to administer remedies to my donkeys, I've like drilled a hole in their carrot and then put the pillules in there and administered it that way. You can also put it in their water trough. There are farmers who use homeopathy in their huge water troughs, and often they are actually quite filthy, but the remedies still work. But yeah, it is best straight on the tongue. You can have the liquid or the pillules just straight on the tongue. It's best not to give it with food, but honestly, sometimes with cats, for example, it can be really hard to open their mouth and chuck a pillule in there or even get them to drink the water. It's like they know there's something in the water. Cats are very smart. So you can put it in their food, but it's not the preferred way to do it. So if you are doing it that way and you find you're not getting good results, it could be that you might just have to adjust the way that you're administering it.
Yeah, no, it's I know with my horses I used to like you said, like get an apple and try and like poke it in. Over time actually they almost ask for them now. So they just sort of go in a feed scoop and they just literally lick them up straight away, and it's quite nice as well because there's a degree of like they kind of when they really want them, they're like quite like they lick them up quite sort of almost aggressively, like get them, and then like obviously as they sort of their body starts to go, actually I don't need it so much anymore, then they sort of become a bit like they sort of push them round the bowl a little bit, which is quite nice and very interesting to see that they do have that fluctuation of going, actually this was helping, now I don't need it anymore, I'm feeling better. So
you honestly blow me away with your homeopathic knowledge. I am so impressed. And some people will actually, if they're tossing up between a couple of remedies for their animals, they will actually offer them both and then let the animal decide. And animals are incredibly intuitive and they will pretty much always pick correctly.
Yeah, it is. I do that with one of mine as well. It's the sort of conversation I've developed over the years with him, and I can hold him. I can be like, well, in my head, I'm like, well, I've used these before. This sort of situation might need it, but I'm not. I can't. The sort of analytical mind has taken over, and I'm like, I can't decide. And I'll sort of go to them, and he'll like nudge the bottle and go, yeah, that's the one I'm having today. And yeah, it's I mean, animals are incredible. I do, and horses, I think perhaps because of their size, they're quite, once you sort of develop this conversation with them, they're quite interesting to sort of have this relationship with, where you sort of bring them into sort of getting involved in what they choose and want to select. And
yeah, actually little children are actually quite good as well. They will often select intuitively. I know, sorry if it sounds, but if the woo-woo is turning anyone off listening, but children can often decide intuitively. And that sometimes they will just grab the remedies and just chuck a whole bottle down. And that's the beautiful thing about homeopathy, is that it's so safe. If your child eats the entire bottle, it's actually only counts as one dose. So it's not the amount that you take, it's the frequency that you take it. So if you are taking it every 15 minutes for, say, 6 doses, that will have a therapeutic effect. But if you just like chug a whole bottle, that really counts as one dose. So it's just so wonderful to have safe medicine in the house, because if you have a little one that gets hold of your Ritalin or your antidepressive medication and downs all of that, it can be really dangerous. And I've had a few clients that's happened to. And with homeopathy, it just means your child's going to have a bit of a sugar rush, and it might be, an expensive exercise if they get hold of your kit of remedies and eat all of it. I've had that happen several times too with clients.
I mean, that's something that really, that was part of how you got into homeopathy, wasn't it? Was actually you were studying to be a naturopath, weren't you? And then you changed track halfway through, but it was partly because it appealed because it was safe for while you're pregnant, and also for newborn babies, and that's an area of sort of conventional medicine that really doesn't have a lot to offer people, does it? There's
and even the natural health industry, like there are so many herbs and supplements that you cannot use in children under 2 years old. And when you're pregnant, you can almost take nothing. You can take some magnesium and some vitamin C and some zinc, and that's about it. Like there's really not much you can take when you're pregnant. So that really is where homeopathy shines. It can be used to treat the side effects of medications. It can be used, like I always say, there's nothing, no condition, mental, emotional, or physical, that homeopathy is not able to help with. Now, I didn't say cure, I said help with,
Yeah.
because if your arm has been amputated, homeopathy is not going to make your arm grow back, but it will help you with the mental, emotional trauma of losing that arm so that you can feel okay about life, so you can move on and be your best self.
Yeah.
In cases of where someone's in palliative care, their organs are shut down, there's nothing you can do, and maybe they're still holding on or they're fearful, you can give them a remedy called arsenicum. It's the top remedy for that stage of, life. I mean, death is part of life, right?
Yeah.
And so it will help that person just be okay within themselves and accept the process that's happening and just release and let go so they can pass peacefully.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
one of the beauties of it, isn't it? Is there is such a diversity of things that it can help with, both physical but also the emotional side of it. Because like you touched on earlier, like, there aren't a lot of tools really in the toolbox in conventional medicine for emotional things. It's pretty much antidepressants and whereas this is much more subtle, and it can actually help you feel better rather than sort of just plateauing your sort of
Mm.
emotional state so that you can cope. And yeah, like you can see, I'm I love it. I think it's an amazing modality. I think, I love the fact that the remedies are really quite affordable. So I feel like
Mm.
it's something that is within reach of everyone. Like you mentioned earlier about places in Africa using it for farmers. It's affordable, which is amazing as
Exactly.
well.
Yeah, and they can homeopathically immunize a lot of those people as well. It takes them like 1 cent to homeopathically immunize the children for, various diseases. And it's so safe and effective. And there is a organization also called Amar Resonance Foundation that does amazing things in Africa. And they've got on their website, I think it's arhf.nl, because it's a website in the Netherlands. They have a 1 hour documentary on there, and you can see the testimonials of these people in Africa and how the remedies have changed their lives. For anybody who wants more like scientific evidence, you can go to the Homeopathic Research Institute, which is actually an organization in the UK. And Dr. Alex Tournier and Rachel Roberts, do a lot of involved with a lot of the research that's happening around homeopathy. There is a couple of really interesting documentaries. One is called Just One Drop, and the other one's called Magic Pills. They're two incredible homeopathic documentaries. And in April this year, there is another documentary called Introducing Homeopathy. You can watch, it's going to be you can purchase to watch it from the 19th or the 22nd of April, but they are in the process at the moment of trying to get it on Netflix. So they can't call it a premiere because it will premiere on Netflix if that all goes through. So this will just be like a private screening for anybody who wants to buy a ticket and watch it in that time frame. But I tell you what, Fiona, if this gets accepted to Netflix and goes out to billions of people around the planet, everybody's going to know what homeopathy is. And I am so excited about that at the moment. So definitely go check out introducinghomeopathy.com.
I'm gonna in the show notes for people, which is the description below the podcast and also on my website page. I've got all Eugenie's links, but I'll work with you and we'll put those extra links in for people as well. So if they want to find out more, because I think one of the sad things about homeopathy is that in a very lazy way, the people who want to discredit it say there's no science to support it. And that's actually a lie. Not beating about the bush is actually a lie. There is a lot of science, there's a lot of research out there. You do have to look for it because it's, the mainstream media don't really want to report on it, but there is science out there that is very supportive of what homeopathy can achieve. And they put it up against placebos in the same way that conventional pharmaceutical drugs would be tested. And they do.
Well,
They
pharmaceutical drugs don't use placebo half the time. They just but yeah, I get what you're saying.
But I mean, the like double blind studies and things like that. But yeah, there is science out there that basically supports this. And I think you touched on it earlier as well, and it was something that I was gonna say to you was about water, and like that's part of, I think, what wasn't really understood about homeopathy and how it worked was this imprint of water, and water is just this amazing natural substance that we just didn't really understand for a very long time. It doesn't behave like anything else on the planet, and we didn't really know what to do with it. So we just kind of went, we'll just put it over here on the shelf and not really accept that it has all of these qualities that we can't really explain at the moment. So we'll just pretend that it's just like everything else. And there are just there's amazing research out there that just shows like actually how water can take on the energetic imprint of anything around it, whether it's frequencies, people there's amazing studies of like, people thinking loving thoughts towards water and then freezing it, and they're getting these amazing like beautiful patterns, and then again sort of thoughts of hate and judgment and like not very nice things towards it, and getting completely different alignment of the ice crystals when they freeze it. There's fascinating things about that as well, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, is there anything that you sort of would like to talk about, particularly about homeopathy, or I don't know. I mean, I feel like
I just think everyone should give it a try. And I often hear people say, "Oh, I didn't think to use homeopathy for that," and I'm always like, "How did you not?" Like, there's literally nothing physical, mental, or emotional that homeopathy is not able to help with. So I'll try and ramble off a few things just off the top of my head. But if you've had a traumatic birth, and your baby might be a bit stunned, you might be a bit stunned, there's remedies for birth trauma. If your baby then has colic and reflux, there's remedies for that. If your baby has issues with weight gain, there's remedies for that. There's remedies to help increase your breast supply. There's remedies to detox you from birth drugs. There's remedies to help detox you from injections. There is remedies for failure to thrive, for delayed development. If you've got a child that's delayed teething, that's late to walk, that's late to speak. There's remedies for any diagnosis you can possibly get is out there. There's remedies for if you're weaning your child and there's lots of grief, you can give remedies to help your child with grief. The remedy Ignatia to help the weaning process easier. If they're going to school, and that transition is hard for them, there's remedies for that. There's remedies for you. There's remedies for night terrors, which often, if a child's got night terrors, you can't take them to a psychologist. There's not much you can do, but the remedy stramonium is incredible for night terrors, and aconite as well. You can give them, say they watch a scary movie, then they start getting night terrors, you can give them aconite or stramonium. There's remedies for bumps, bruises, sore throats, coughs, colds, eczema, anything that can happen with your body. There is a remedy for that. A remedy for low self-esteem, for weight loss. I'm just trying to think of some things that I've been treating in the clinic just even this week. Homeopathy can help with all of that, but the mental emotionals, I feel, is really where homeopathy shines, and to help you reach kind of like a higher state of consciousness as well. So there are some remedies that can really help you kind of level up. So if you, and it can help, there's remedies that can help you with ancestral trauma. So if you have something going on and nothing seems to really work with you, it could be that it's actually not your trauma blocking the healing response. It could be ancestral trauma, things coming through, and we have remedies for that as well. So sometimes we just need to clear.
I might get the term away. Wrong here, but is it miasm? Is that the
there's miasmatic as well, but also definitely miasmatic remedies. I'm like honestly so impressed that you know that. There's also other remedies that can also help with trauma of a different, just anything trauma. Homeopathy is amazing.
I think when I was listening to you, I was thinking obviously the parallels with with animals as well, and a lot of the newborn birth problems, young teething. I mean that's applicable to a lot of animals as well. The separation, you think of little puppies when they're sort of 10 12 weeks old and they leave their mum and they go off to this new home, and all the things that it can support with them. But the other thing I know that you mentioned on your website is that actually for your own children, they've never had antibiotics. And again, this is something that is becoming more talked about and awareness of is we've got these problems with resistances to in terms of antibiotics. There's resistance to antibiotics in terms of animals. We've got resistance to worming protocols and things, the medicines that are available for that. And again, this is a beautiful place where homeopathy has this amazing, power really to step into this void and basically offer you things to do that don't then create the resistance and the problems that we have with antibiotics and things.
Exactly. Well, that documentary Magic Pills actually is about a guy who had MRSA, so it was resistance so resistant to the antibiotics,
Yeah.
and there was basically nothing else they could do with him. So as a last resort, he went to a homeopath, got cured, then got interested, then made a documentary with Ananda Moore. So I think it was I'm pretty sure it was in that one, or it was in Just One Drop, either one of the two. But it's a pretty
Yeah.
fascinating story.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it's good that you mentioned that point, because antibiotic resistance is something that is really scary. One of the things I see in clinic all the time are clients with urinary tract infections in children and in adults, and they go for round after round of antibiotics. It destroys their gut flora, so then their immune system's down, so then they are more susceptible to UTIs. And so, they get it again, and then they get thrush after the antibiotics, and their gut flora is just so destroyed. So they just go on this roller coaster of antibiotics, and then they end up with interstitial cystitis. And it's, and then they have to have these horrible drugs which have horrendous side effects. You can listen to my interview I did with Paula Brown, who is the president of Americans for Homeopathy Choice, and that was her story. So she had the cycle of UTIs, then ended up with interstitial cystitis, and then we had to go on these drugs. Well, was told she had to go on these drugs with horrendous side effects, and then she found homeopathy instead. So there's countless stories like that. So
I would so Eugenie has her own podcast. In case people didn't catch it earlier, it's called the Homeopathy Hangout, and there'll be a link to that as well. But you can obviously, if you're on a podcast player, you can look it up and it'll be there available for you as well. So definitely go and have a look. I think you've got several hundred episodes and countless amazing guests that you've spoken to, and there's just a whole brilliant, like almost encyclopedic knowledge about homeopathy that you can just dive straight into. We've also got a link to an amazing video that you've done that is just a little quick sort of 30-minute introduction to homeopathy as well. Because you're just actually, to touch on for people, you're actually based in Perth in Australia, and you have your own clinic there with I think, is it 6 other homeopaths? So you quite
five
quite
other
a big
homeopaths
busy
and
place.
6 staff.
Yeah. And but do you do consultations for people worldwide, or is it just for people there?
The homeopaths on my team treat people worldwide, but
Okay.
I always try to say find a local homeopath. Just as easy with the time zones. My homeopaths on my team, they do see people all over the world, America, UK, wherever. But if you can find a local homeopath, that really, there's a lot of power that lies in that. And then you have like a confidant, you have somebody that has your back. If there's an emergency situation, you can go grab a remedy, or they can post something out to you, and it's much easier to build that rapport. I would say I've got almost 300 episodes on the podcast with homeopaths from around the world. So I would say listen to a few of them, see which homeopath you resonate with. And then often homeopaths will have 10-minute free discovery calls. So make a few of those calls to really make sure that you have good rapport with that person, because that is the most important thing before you start your journey. Have good rapport with that, so you feel safe with that homeopath and you can really open up to them.
Yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? Is it does rely on having this deeper connection with someone, a deeper relationship with them, and so you're going to go on a journey with them. So yeah, you want to find someone that you feel aligned to, you feel comfortable with, that that you're happy to sort of tell all the gory details to, as it were. And yeah, I think that's really great advice to say. And there's a lot of countries will have I guess sort of homeopathic associations and things that you could look up and find local people as well. And of course, Google is brilliant for for searching for things now as well. It's a lot easier to find than it would have been in years past. But oh well, I mean, it's been a bit of a whistle stop the chat today. I think there is so much about homeopathy that we could dive into, and hopefully maybe at some point in the future we can come back and have another chat and maybe sort of go a little bit deeper into things. But I think it feels like a nice time to sort of like round up for today's chat. But is there anything that you'd like to just leave people with, any sort of message on your heart that you'd like to share with people today about anything homeopathy or anything beyond that?
Oh, if it's homeopathy related, then I would say just give it a try. There is a homeopathic revolution happening right this second after COVID. Just so many more people wanting to empower themselves.
Yeah.
And if it's just a message in general for people to put down their phones and connect with the people around them more.
Yeah, I think
And with
that's
nature.
beautiful. Yeah, exactly. It's just I mean, for me, it plays into the relationship with nature, that all of these remedies are from, sort of natural sources. And it's just it's this message of basically just empowering people. And I think that's really something that I'm quite passionate about, is about giving people the tools, the knowledge, the wisdom to just take back a bit of autonomy over, the decisions that they can make and have in life. And for me, homeopathy has been part of that. It's empowered me with my animals, my family, to feel like, there's something I can do. And I think that's really is just, it just changes your physiology almost, doesn't it? To know that actually you have the ability to make an impact on your health. And I think that's something that we've kind of forgotten, but we are slowly remembering. And yeah,
I literally just want to give you a round of applause after that.
Oh, bless you.
I think you should go train to be a homeopath. You sound like you know so much about it already.
I think well, I've trained to be quite a few things, and I think that's my challenge. Is I'm just like I'm just this big sponge basically, and I have like so much information about so many things. And I wouldn't say a jack of all trades and a master of none, but I just have so many interests. And it's like,
Did you know that there's a second tail to that one? Because I always call myself a jack of all trade, a master of none. And then my husband recently said, there's another part to that. It says oftentimes better than master of one. And I'm like, oh, I never heard that part. I
No,
like
I've
that.
never
So
heard
jack
that
of all
at all.
trade, master of none, oftentimes better than master of one.
Oh, well, there we go. You see, perfect. That's amazing. I love that. And I think that's the perfect way for us to wrap up today. I will have all of your links available. I'll also hopefully, when I go through, I'll pull out the other links that we've mentioned for people. And yeah, just thank you so much for everything that you're doing, basically championing homeopathy for people and giving them the opportunity to basically empower themselves and their families, because I think that's really just the biggest gift that you can give people is that. So thank you again for
Thank you
everything you're
so
doing.
much. And can I just say thank you for all the work you put into your podcast? Because it's only a fellow podcaster that will know how much time and effort and money and blood and sweat and tears goes into creating a podcast. Nobody will ever know unless they've done one themselves. So just want to say thank you to you as well.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Yes, it is. It's definitely a labor of love, isn't it?
It really
But
is.
yeah, it's a great. I love podcasting though, because I feel, particularly now in our society, in our culture, everything is kind of reduced down to like these little snippets, little quotes, little, small bits of information. And I was reflecting the other day how much I loved the opportunity to sit down with someone for an hour and literally just dive full into them and what they're doing. There's no distractions, we've got everything is on silence, on mute. There's no notifications buzzing off, and you're just, that's just a real gift, I think, in society now, to have that opportunity to just be fully present with someone and listen to their wisdom, and also then get to share it with other people around the world. So yeah, a podcasting revolution alongside homeopathy revolution. And we're hopefully society's on the right track, I think. So
I hope so. Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Eugenie, and hopefully we'll come back and have another chat again soon as well. Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.